You know, as a pastor, I have known really too many elderly people who were still driving when I knew they shouldn't. Yet every time I'd ask them about it, they would talk about how hard it is to get places, shopping, worship, places they volunteer, in a world dependent on cars. And so a new service has sprouted up in this region to exactly solve that problem for elderly people. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking about this solution right after these messages. Welcome back. Lois Favier grew up in the Lehigh Valley, and after a 25-year career of public service and private sector management, she returned. And she is now the founder and first executive director of the local unit of the Independent Transportation Network, or ITN, of the Lehigh Valley. Welcome, Lois.
Thank you, Bill.
You know, a lot of leaders of a lot of organizations come here to talk to me on taking the initiative, but few have as interesting of a founding story as yours had related to your return to the Lehigh Valley. I wonder if you could share that story. It's wonderful.
Sure. As you mentioned, I had been gone from the Lehigh Valley pursuing many different career paths for the past 25 years. And as I was gone, my parents, of course, aged, and they started experiencing some health issues and just issues of aging. And so I decided that it was time to come home and help out.
Yes.
And so I returned to the Lehigh Valley about 4 years ago. And as I was pursuing my goals here of helping my parents, I realized that there was a transportation issue for older adults in our community. Mm-hmm. Back in the mid-90s, I became aware of an organization called ITN America, which is Independent Transportation Network. And as I was looking around our community for transportation solutions, I remembered ITN America. And so I contacted the founding member of ITN America, and we talked about starting an ITN affiliate here in the Lehigh Valley. And that's how I first started ITN Lehigh Valley.
So it really grew out of a personal concern for in your parents' life about transportation difficulties.
Not only my parents, but I have a number of relatives who are quite old now, in their 90s, and everyone seemed to be experiencing the same issue of finding transportation to the places they needed to go: medical appointments, grocery stores, pharmacies, and the like.
Where do you fit the theme and title of our show here, of taking the initiative? You took the initiative, saw a problem, took an initiative. You know, plus you mentioned the founder of the organization nationally, which is, what is it, about 20 years old or so?
Yes.
But that's a really inspiring story also. I wonder if you could talk about how it got started nationally.
Yes, the national organization began with a personal experience by the founder, Catherine Freund. Back in, I guess the incident occurred in the 80s. Her son, her 3-year-old son, was playing outdoors. His ball rolled into the street, and he went out to the street to retrieve it, and her 84-year-old neighbor was backing out of the driveway and did not see her small son and hit her son. Thankfully, he is healthy today, and he fully recovered. But this experience really jarred Ms. Freund, and she began to look at senior transportation in a whole new light and decided that it was time to do something about 84-year-old individuals and elderly people who maybe should no longer be driving. And it was her goal to come up with a solution and a transportation model to address this issue, and that's exactly what she did.
Both around the issues of sort of, again, her personal story of thinking about the protection of her child, but also, boy, how, if that were me, I would feel so awful having hurt that child because my reaction times were not good enough or whatever. What a terrible thing to carry then the rest of one's life.
Right. When people don't have choices and options, however, they're left in these situations which, do endanger not only themselves but the community at large. And this is another reason why the Independent Transportation Network is such an important addition to our community.
So what is ITN, or the Independent Transportation Network?
Well, ITN Lehigh is a membership organization, number one. We offer transportation for seniors 60 years of age and older and visually impaired adults 18 and over, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to whatever destination they want to go to within the Lehigh Valley. Mm-hmm. Our service area essentially encompasses Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton, and the surrounding smaller communities. So we serve quite a wide area. There is an application process, and we provide door-through-door and arm-through-arm service. So that's a little bit different than some of the other organizations.
Door through door and arm through arm.
And arm through arm.
Not just pull up to the curb and get out, ma'am.
No. Uh-huh. And by door through door, let me explain that. That means when we arrive at the doctor's office or the large medical building with 6 floors and 200 doctors, we take our rider in through the door, up the elevator to the office waiting room, if they desire that service. And we also, when we pick them up, we go up to that same waiting room office on the 6th floor, and we meet them there, bring them down, and take them in the car.
And 24/7. Those are unique features. There are maybe some other organizations that do some, and some have been on here, that help with transportation needs. These are very unique features of yours, but I'm convinced of the need for such, and of a growing need for such a service. As a pastor, I just see it all the time, but that's sort of anecdotal. I wonder if you would talk a little bit about the sort of cultural and societal issues that are precipitating behind this need.
Right. Well, I'm sure as you look around your neighbors and friends and other people who are on the highway, you notice that there's a lot of older people in our community. People are living longer, and the number of individuals over 65, we expect that number to grow by almost 22% by 2040. For those individuals 75 years of age and older, that number is going to grow by over 107% in the Lehigh Valley by the year 2040. So the question becomes, how are all of these elderly individuals going to get around? Are they going to be in their cars and driving on our roads? Is that the safest thing to do? We believe that a lot of times individuals need help with transportation. As we age, things change for everyone. We experience changes in our vision, changes in our mobility, and our response time. And so the goal of ITN Lehigh Valley is to introduce the service to individuals before it's actually time to give up the car keys. We encourage individuals who are scaling back their driving due to perhaps limitations, who are self-limiting their driving, to try our service and to see how it might fit into their longer-term plan, because too many times it happens that they have to undergo an operation or they lose a spouse, and all of a sudden they're without transportation.
Now, the folks watching in Philadelphia tonight, probably, I can imagine many saying, well, why don't those folks just, take the bus or the subway or walk on the sidewalk? You want to address those matters?
Sure. We are supportive of all the transportation providers here in the Lehigh Valley. We need each and every one of them. But individuals who have never taken a bus in 80 years are not necessarily going to begin riding the bus when they're 80. Okay?
If there's a bus for them to take.
If there's a bus for them to take.
Wow.
Correct.
I mean,
Many of the bus routes do not run either at convenient times for these individuals who may have multiple medical appointments at different times. They may not be close to a bus stop that is accessible to them. They have canes and walkers and things like that. The bus stops may not be covered with a shelter. It's scary at night at a bus stop for an elderly person, or even in the early evening. So while they're great, they're another way to get around. Lanta and Easton Coach here in the Lehigh Valley provide a wonderful service, but we need more because of limited times that they provide, that they run, limited routes that they run. We just need a little bit more, and that's what we are. ITN Lehigh Valley is another transportation option.
And with the design of so many of the communities around here, it's like they're designed to be anti-walking. Because of zoning, you just got pools of housing.
Correct.
How do folks get to the doctor, the grocery store, the church, the synagogue, whatever?
We're a very car-centric community and a country. It's not just us. It's all across the country. People are so reliant on their cars, and they move out into the country, out into developments where it's all housing tracts, and you don't have the local grocery store in the middle of that tract or the local pharmacy. So that's another discussion really on livable communities and moving toward this idea of livable communities that not only have the housing and address the housing needs of all ages, but also address the other needs of the community, such as health care and food shopping and worship services and all the other things that make up a life.
Yes. Well, what an interesting conversation. But we need to take a break now. And then I want to hear some of the details about ITN and how it works, how people can use it, how they can be a driver. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these community service announcements. Welcome back. I'm Reverend Bill Kunze, and my conversation partner tonight is Lois Favier and Favier. The Texas emphasis, right? And Lois is the founder and executive director of the Independent Transportation Network of the Lehigh Valley, or ITN. Lois, I'm sure that there are people who are watching now who need your service, or at least they know somebody who needs their service, or sooner or later they're going to need your service. How does it work?
Well, if someone needs our service, the first thing you could do is call us, or you can visit our website, and there's a lot of information there. But essentially what you would do is you would complete a rider application. It's quite an extensive application, but the reason it's so long is because we want to know all the details about the customers we're serving. So we'll ask whether, for example, a customer or a rider needs an assistive device, whether or not they're comfortable with a high car or a low car, because as you know today, there's all different types of vehicles. Mm-hmm. So we go into a lot of sort of personal needs types of questions, and that's so that when the rider calls for service, we're sending out the appropriate vehicle and the appropriate driver. All of our rides are given in private automobiles by volunteer and paid drivers. Right now, we are using only volunteer drivers who drive their own vehicles, okay? To become a volunteer driver, you would also need to fill out an application. And once you complete the application, we would have an interview, we would have a chat, and then we would conduct training. We also do background checks on all of our drivers, very thorough background checks on their driving records and criminal history and all those kinds of things, because we want to ensure that our riders are safe in the vehicles they're riding in.
What about the membership aspect?
The membership, there is a membership fee, and I should mention this because this is not a free service. There is a cost to this service. So there is an annual $60 membership fee for an individual. For a household, which is 2 or more people at the same address, it would be a $75 annual fee. Then The cost of the ride depends on the distance you're traveling and whether you call ahead. The average cost of a ride, we tell our riders, is about $11 for a 5 to 6 mile one-way trip. Now, there are ways to bring down the cost of that ride, and one of the ways, as I mentioned, is calling ahead. You get a cheaper ride rate. Our ride rates per mile are $1.25 per mile. There's also a $3.50 pickup fee, okay? But, for example, if you were thinking of no longer driving and you had a vehicle sitting in your driveway that wasn't being used, you could trade in that vehicle to ITNLehighValley, and the value of that vehicle would be deposited in what we call your personal transportation account. Each rider has a little bank account or a personal transportation account. And the reason we set up these pre-funded accounts is so that there's no money changing hands in the vehicle.
Oh, that's good.
Because some of the people we serve have dementia and different issues that would really make changing money difficult. So at the end of each month, each member receives a statement listing all of the rides they've taken, the cost of each ride, and then we ask that the rider refund their personal transportation account based on their anticipated usage the next month. So we ask riders to begin with a $35 amount in the personal transportation account. So when you would join, if you joined as an individual, you would pay the $60 membership fee, annual membership fee, and then you would fund the personal transportation account to the amount of $35, and then you would be all set up to ride.
I think people are getting more and more accustomed to these prepaid accounts. Many employers use that for your non-covered medical expenses.
Yes.
You have a prepaid. At the coffee shop I go to, I put money on a card, so it's
Right.
It's becoming more and more the way we're
Right.
used to operating. Let me put you on a spot here.
Sure.
What if someone calls you and your fees are modest compared to riding a cab or even paying car insurance? I mean, this is a modest fee, but what if they couldn't pay it?
Well, we do have a program called the Road Scholarship Program. Now, the Road Scholarship Program is designed for low-income individuals. The way that works is our volunteer drivers, when they drive for ITNLehighValley, they can either get a cash reimbursement of 25 cents per mile, or they can donate their credits to the Road Scholarship Program or to another person's personal transportation account. So I, as a volunteer driver, if I were a volunteer driver, I could donate my credits to my parents' account. Okay, and then they can use those credits to drive. The same thing with the Road Scholarship Program. There are donated credits in that program, and they can then be used for low-income riders. So that's one way. We also encourage low-income individuals to sort of take a look around their community or their families, if they have family members in the area, whether or not those family members would be willing to serve as a volunteer driver for as little as once a month, because our volunteer drivers also get 2 free memberships, okay? So that would take care of a low-income rider's membership fee. We also encourage individuals to check with their local churches and other organizations that they may get services from, because part of what we do is we try and establish relationships, organizational memberships, which address the issue of low-income individuals from those particular organizations. So an organization can establish an organizational account with ITN America, for example, a church. A church could then provide maybe just a few volunteer drivers for us on a whatever basis they want, and those credits for those volunteer drivers would accumulate in the church's account. That church then would have the ability to distribute those credits however they wanted to. and for whatever reason they wanted to. So they could use those credits for a low-income member of their congregation to go, for example, to medical appointments. So there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different flexible ways to address the issue of cost with our service.
I know you're recruiting drivers right now, and it's some responsibility to take another person in your car and all those things. What are sort of you mentioned some of the benefits, one kind of benefits. Why should I consider volunteering as a driver with ITN?
Because we have some great riders, okay? We have a number of drivers who will actually call and ask, is so-and-so going someplace today? Because we're interested in whether or not they need a ride. The feeling you get of satisfaction and what you learn from our riders is just amazing. We have a 94-year-old rider who volunteers in the community, and we take her to volunteer at a local school and a local church.
Oh, wow.
And the history and the stories she tells are just priceless. You can't capture some of these things, and you would never get some of these things without interacting with an older adult. So we really encourage volunteer drivers to drive with us.
Yeah.
It's like driving with a friend, and that's what we tell our riders. All our riders ride in the front seat so that you can have a conversation, and it's just a wonderful experience.
So there's not only this really important service that benefits the community and the seniors that are visually impaired, but it builds relationships, right?
Absolutely.
It's a whole new world of opening up. And you had talked about some of the financial aspects, because you have this, what you call sustainability model. You also do a little fundraising around that. We only have a minute or so left. Anything you want to say about that?
Okay, well, generally in the spring we'll have a fundraiser. The cost of our rides is only half of the true cost of the ride, so this is why we use a fundraiser. So look for a Walk for Rides event that will probably be happening every spring. The sustainability issue is important to note, because many transportation services are funded with government dollars. We try and stay away from government dollars as much as possible because they're just not reliable.
So you're going to be a self-sustaining community service. You got about a 30-second message for our folks?
Well, I hope that you will consider using ITNs for your loved ones, your neighbors, those who you feel might need our service. We appreciate you spreading the word, and please consider volunteer driving.
I hope you do consider all that, and thank you, Lois, for sharing about your work, and thank you for tuning in this evening, taking the initiative. We'll be back same time next week. Stay tuned for more positively different television to follow. Good night.